One. And we are recording. Hey guys, this is Tommy on Tommy Untamed. We got a great guest today with my buddy Gray talking about MK Ultra, Monarch, and all the other stuff that you were told is a conspiracy and is provably not. And today is Thursday, May 1st, 2025 at 2 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You guys can go to the description and go follow Gray on Twitter. Your website's in there. And yeah, no, we're just talking before and just riffing about it is Gray gonna change genders? Is he a woman now? Is he a fox? And do I need to be a good friend and acknowledge that? And had me thinking, like I always say a bunch of dog shit. Like I always say faggot and retard because I grew up in the 90s with South Park. Well, I won't say one of my best friends, a bit older than me, truly one of the people I respect most in the world. It's a gay dude. I love him. I never say faggot around him, but I say faggot because that's how I grew up. Same with retard. I won't go into more privacy reasons, but I do know, like, mentally challenged. I love him to death. I've always said, like, I'll never do the gender thing. If someone actually did, and this has nothing to do with the episode, by the way. If somebody close to me actually did start identifying it, of course I would. Of course. But the other thing I do get to is like the suicide rate for transitioning is like 40 plus percent. So another part of me goes, that's not the same as like, oh, my gay friend's coming over. Tommy, can you not say faggot? I'm like, of course I won't. The one holdup I do have about the whole pronoun thing is like if Gray, you came to me and you're like, I'm Jenna now. Like, yeah, Gray's my buddy, of course. But another part of me goes, I get not saying retard or faggot or whatever. But if something does result in a 4 out of 10 suicide rate, at what point is it immoral for us to enable that? I'm sober. If Gray, you go, I'm going out for a couple of beers tonight. You do go for it. I'm not gonna fucking tell you how to live. If you tell me, yeah, man, I'm getting wild. I think I'm gonna go buy a Xanax, and I go, hey, actually, there's like a 30% chance of all pills being laced with fentanyl. I don't care if you do Xanax, dude. I've done it. It's a good time. You really need to like watch out because like there's a 30% chance that you're gonna stop breathing and die. If I went, yeah, dude, go wild, and I knew that there was a chance of there being fentanyl, or let's just say a 43% chance of there being fentanyl, at what point is it no longer like live and let live? And at what point is it immoral for you to enable that? And that's just one thing I was thinking more and more of is like, as much as I do sound like a racist conservative, I'm really not. You gay, cool, man, go for it. At a certain point, are we not enabling something that, and I'm not even saying that it's 100, but I mean, that's an insane level of like suicide. And I say that as somebody that lost a sibling to suicide. I know it's been over 11 years. I know how it's still to this day. There's not a day I go by that is either a good or a bad memory, but that is in my mind. And I guess that's where I'm like, at what point am I enabling that? If somebody was like, I go by this now, am I a good friend if I go, okay, yeah, sure, I'll call you she? Or am I a better friend if I go, hey man, a lot of people end up killing themselves that go down this road? That has nothing to do with this episode. If people are like, oh, it's a gender episode, there's never been a gender
Exactly.
episode, and there never will be a gender episode. We were just fucking around beforehand that I was just fucking with you. I'm like, I'm gonna,
Had to fix
you're
my
going by,
name.
you're going by Jennifer now. And yeah, and it's like, that's all it was. So if any, I wonder how many people just tuned out. I'll make sure the thumbnail says MK Ultra mind control. Don't worry.
All right.
Here's the meat. That was just you know what? Forget all that fucking, here's Gray. We're talking about MK Ultra, assassins, reprogramming the mind, shaping world events with Black Ops, Nazi CIA, Midnight Climax, Neuralink, brain interfacing technology. Forget all that other shit. I was just thinking aloud, but whatever. Great. I'm gonna hand it over.
Hey, man. Fair enough.
What an intro. You're like, what do I do with this?
Hey, man. That's what happens when I come in here with the wrong
Yeah.
name
All
on my.
right. Hey, man. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, but fuck, I'm gonna hand it over to you. So I think you watched the episode I did yesterday with my buddy David because I think you mentioned something in that, didn't you?
I did. No, I didn't
Oh
actually.
well,
What is it?
yeah, because when you
What is
texted me
that?
beforehand.
Might have been a coincidence.
No, yeah, he said spin program. No, I had my buddy David on yesterday, who I've had on. I love him. He's just a cool dude in Canada, and he
Yeah.
actually was talking about something from a white paper he read from the 70s, by like Stanford or Rand, called
Uh-huh.
segmented. polycephalous idea network, and it was the idea that instead of top-down control where you just have state propaganda, think like Soviet Union, it is
Mm-hmm.
much easier to control people's brains by having the illusion of choice, which is right now you would say, I don't know, a bunch of alt-right podcasts. They're independent. No, they're not. They might think they're independent, but Operation Mockingbird didn't die. And so we kept going back to the acronym segmented polycephalous, polycephalous meaning multi-headed, so like multiple different shows. So as opposed to the top-down, state propaganda that is horseshit, if you hear it from Joe Rogan and then Theo Vaughn and then Jordan Peterson and then Tucker Carlson and then Elon retweets it, in your mind, you might go, oh, well, a lot of people are saying this. In reality, it's no different than Operation Mockingbird. But if you didn't watch that, man, I don't
No,
know.
that's a funny coincidence, but this
Mind
is a
control.
different type
Fuck.
of spin programming. Yeah, we got you.
Fuck. All right. I'll
Yeah,
shut up now.
man.
You take it over, man.
No, that's a funny coincidence, though.
Well,
Yeah, so this is about the history of spin programming, its relation to spiral symbology and pedophile rings.
Yeah, the triangle thing.
Exactly, all that. And then applications in military and aerospace and modern neuro warfare. Right. We're going to go extra nerdy. I told you on this one. But it's important. It's important for people to realize because, you see all this stuff come out with like, not necessarily Pizzagate, but obviously a lot came out with this. But you see all this spiral symbology and these pedophiles have codes that they go by. And a lot of them include these spirals. But people don't understand what's behind that and the significance of that. So what I'm, here to do is to shine a little bit of light on that so people can get an understanding of what's fucking going on with these kids, what brainwashing is, and make this a little bit more real in their mind so they'll, stand up and do something about it. We don't want to all have to focus on this, but, we'll wipe it out and then, can go back to, whatever it is we want to do.
You can't. I think Nick Bryan, author of the Franklin Scandal, said that on an interview with Tim Dillon back in like 2016 or 2017. As they go through the whole thing, they talk about how high up this goes, and then there's a feeling of hopelessness. And he goes, "Well, it's not hopeless. What you do have to do is," he's like, and I probably won't see it in my lifetime, but at the very least, the very first thing you have to do is acknowledge it's happening, and you have to know what's happening. So it's like, yes,
Exactly.
the CIA military industrial complex, pedophile. Yes, it's very intimidating. And no, I don't necessarily think Gray and I are going to personally win. But if we can, at the very least, move the needle forward and go, hey, it is happening, that's a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. And this is going to demystify it a lot and explain to people what's going on because it's not what people see and it's not what you think by how it's been presented through Mockingbird, right? It's not, don't get me wrong. There's definitely some gruesome elements to it, of course. But by far and large, what's going on is some of these people are trafficked from, some of these children are trafficked from, unfortunately, people in their own family. They don't have marks on them by far and large. These are sophisticated means. Yes, you have a spectrum of where this happens. You have your real rough force, manual sex slavery in third world countries. You have your abusive pimps and stuff like this. But then you also have a more mafia-esque organized criminal activity to where it's more clean. Violence gets in the way of money and it's, they have a smart PR front, right? Whitewash it and, it gets sophisticated. So going here just into the basis of this, the creation of spinning apparatus by Darwin and its adaptation by Cox. Okay, so the origins of spin programming trace back to the late 18th century with Aramis Darwin. And that is actually Charles Darwin's grandfather, the Darwin theory of evolution or whatever. That happens to be his grandfather. So he proposed that spinning could benefit mental health by inducing sleep, okay? He had a book that was, or he had like a chronicle, of articles or whatever, Zoonomia, from 1794 to 1801. So this dates way back. And there's a more recent book in 2005, Spin Doctors. It talks about how Darwin conceptualized a rotative couch, okay? So, and these aren't necessarily Darwin's, but this is just a collection of kind of like the furthest back that we can trace this. So The thing is, this rotative couch was a device to spin patients on a vertical axis, and it was believed that it would calm the mind through disorientation and fatigue. Okay. Now, Darwin didn't construct this for his private patients, but he recommended it for hospital use, and that set the stage for its adaptation in the psychiatric treatment. Now, you have Joseph Mason Cox. Joseph Mason Cox was a physician at Fish Pond's private lunatic asylum near Bristol, okay? And he put Darwin's idea into practice. And we can see some early models, vomits machine. You see causes and cure of insanity. And, there was quite a few people that worked on these and tested these. And essentially, Cox introduced it as a circulating swing, chair or a bed suspended and rotated to induce vertigo and submission in patients. Okay. In the book, The Original Spin Doctors, Cox's device was widely used in European asylums between 1810 and 1840, and especially in German-speaking regions. Okay, so this really went a lot into some of this early German research. This is the stuff that people don't hear about, and we'll get to why, because unfortunately it's so effective and largely undetectable. So it was used at first to control maniacs. It was described as a moral and medical means to enforce obedience. And spinning patients, was to the point of physical collapse. And this basically marked the beginning of spinning as a method for psychological control. And that's a concept that would later evolve into the more sinister practice of spin programming, which is actual brainwashing. So the application of spinning in asylums was not gentle, to say the least, okay? It was a brutal method, and it left patients in extreme distress. It was evidenced by many historical accounts, and there's a few excerpts from some of the books that I reference, and I can even provide a link to the drive for some of these old books if people want to dive deeper. I've just took some excerpts from them. There's an example of extreme physiological effects, including urination and defecation, okay? So an excerpt from one of these books from when this is used on a patient. Centrifugal force drove the blood to the brain, and this caused intense anxiety, false sensations, fear of suffocation, nausea, vertigo, vomiting, urination, and defecation. And finally, bleeding under the conjunctiva tunica, which that's basically the eye, the layer of the eye. So healthy persons usually begged for the machine to be stopped before 2 minutes, but some of the, clinically, mentally insane back then, would endure it for as long as 4 minutes. And that would, until they were absolutely broken, okay? And this here is a 1993 paper on spin programming, a newly uncovered technique of systematic mind control that we will get to more in here in a second. So another excerpt is spinning as a tool for discipline and obedience. So it was used for delirious, melancholic, obstinate, and uncooperative mental patients to train them to submit to discipline and to live according to prescribed regulations, above all, to be obedient. It was used for patients with suicidal tendencies, for those who refuse to eat, for silent, passive, or just altogether uncooperative patients. And it was even used for epileptics and just for general madness, okay? The quote from Heinroth, which was, one of the founders of like really using this, using this practice, right, in the mental asylums, there are many names. If this doesn't help, nothing will. That's basically what this was. It was the end all of, what do you want to call it? Cures, right? I mean, you know how they used to do all sorts of things. I mean, they used to literally
lobotomy.
They used to do lobotomies and cut people's, brains, separate
the final card. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like basically, if we spin them into oblivion and that doesn't work, nothing will. It was basically just that effective of a method, Another quote from Cox was one of the most constant effects of swinging is a greater or less degree of vertigo, attended by pallor, nausea, and vomiting, and frequently the evacuation of the contents of the bladder. So let's just get this straight. They're spinning people until they're pissing and shitting themselves.
Yeah.
This is what it is. And this is the type of treatments. Yeah, there was a lot of grotesque treatments. But it's important to note that, spinning and bleeding in the eyes, like that's obviously extreme and notable, but really what you're getting outside of that is no mark torture because, other than if you spin them until their eye capsules, or they're, bust, it's really not that much detectable as long as you clean up the vomit, the urination, the defecation. So, it's rough. So, another excerpt would be the circulating swing was a machine which spun the patient into a state of vertigo, vomiting, and eventual unconsciousness. And since vomiting was generally regarded as a therapeutic effect back then, a collapsed patient was manifestly calmer than a manic one, and the treatment scarcely needed any more justifications, just that it made them puke and made them docile, right, and made them compliant. So it was largely put into effect, to control people. It could even be used without drugs and stuff like that. So this was like a large tool, again, going into the 1800s. So there's even more. I mean, if we get into it, basically, they learned, you can hear the parallels in MK Ultra here already, I think, but they learned that the effects could be intensified and augmented by fear. Big surprise, right? So, for instance, the revolving chair would be placed in a dark, musty room where there was unusual noises, horrible scents, and just other strong stimuli, whether it be like lights or, just whatever it may be, right? So they would scare them and spin them. And this was like for ultimate compliance. There's kind of built on some of this, kind of would compare it to like, motion sickness, just inducing extreme motion sickness and fear and panic. Again, just for ultimate compliance. So, yep. So going forward, we'll get right into it. So this paper from 1993 is spin programming. And it goes into, it's the newly uncovered technique of systematic mind control, okay? This was in 1993. It was presented at the 6th Western Clinical Conference on Multiple Personality and Disassociation, okay? It's important to remember in the mid-90s, that's when a lot of this stuff was coming out. There was the 1995 ACHRE. I think we discussed that in one of my previous episodes, where they're just discussing techniques to split the personality, because it's one thing to brainwash someone and, get them compliant. But then they're going to be acting funny publicly, right? So the important thing is that they, essentially torture, traumatize a child into having a split personality, and then they make that compliant, and they just link it up to a code, So going through this, there's just so much to this, but basically from a series of patients, it was observed how much they reported spin programming. And there's in-depth data about how that affects what's now known as internal family systems. And that's kind of the psychiatric term of people that have dissociative identity disorder. They essentially get a bunch of people inside themselves, and they see themselves as different people, and it kind of self-assimilates into an internal family system. You just have different parts of your brain that act certain ways, but if it gets interrupted, it's kind of, you have like an internal father, internal mother, you create an internal family system, and that's kind of the latest science. So what's been noted is that a lot of people that went through this, they are found to doodle. Okay. And yes, people can just doodle things. Obviously, there is no, ultimate all encompassing. But some of the foremost doodles that are observed by subjects that underwent this is tornadoes, circular spirals, square spirals, triangle spirals. And then just, you see these loops. Trying to keep it on there. It's jumping around. But anyway, so it can be observed heavily. And it's important to note, over the past 10 years, I've been case working with individuals, but also networking with nationwide trauma therapists. And spin programming is by far one of the most prevalent issues that comes up. And it seems to be the foundational basis that a lot of these organized rings are using. And we can think of why. Well, if you think about it, a spin programming contraption can be essentially created, designed, put together for relatively cheap. You don't have to have the level of expertise or take the level of risk to procure certain substances, right? Things like this.
This chair. I mean,
exactly, right?
You don't need to build a
fucking
fucking bomb, or you have like some hermetically sealed lab and EKG machines to. It's pretty. And it's also deniable. There's no marks, and it's also, what's that torture device? Dude, this is my office chair. Fuck off.
this is a children's round to go thing,
Yeah,
whatever you
yeah,
call
yeah,
it, round to go.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know? But
Merry-go-round.
yeah, so I mean, it's a thing, you know. So, anyways, yeah, the historical use of spinning to control patients laid the foundation for spin programming, a mind control technique that's detailed in this 1993 paper by John D. Lovern. And basically, the study is based on psychotherapy with patients diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder and histories of ritual abuse. And it describes how abusers use spinning to manipulate victims' minds. The children were reported to be as young as 3 or 4, and they were just physically spun on devices and sometimes when drugged, but usually exposed to flashing lights or music. Okay. And that would eventually create a dissociative state. This was paired with cognitive training, and that's where victims were taught to visualize themselves either as spinning tornadoes or coached through other processes that would get themselves to identify as certain states. So you get dissociative identity disorder. Basically, you're traumatizing them into the dissociated state and then walking them into being something new, just like a coach, just like you teach a child, you know, on the good side, you might teach them, hey, you have to be strong for this. You might have to do this. Well, obviously, one of these evil, sick pedophiles might teach them to be compliant and might teach them that they are a certain type of slave. I mean, it gets absolutely revolting, but it can't be overstated. It cannot be overstated, just the crucialness here. So a lot of people are familiar with some of these, you know, the boy lover, the little boy lover, things like this. You know, just going into all the different codes, pizza, all this, you know, and a lot of this has, there's been a lot of misinformation involved with this, but at the same time, like this is verified pedophile code. Okay.
Yeah, no, this isn't crazy rantings. Yeah, this is all,
Yeah.
it just made my stomach turn. This is like a
You know,
flashback to
it's,
2016.
it's bad. Yeah. But you know, and so we're going to explain though, the thing here is that the spiral symbology, it plays a critical role and it's a dual role. Okay. It's not just a covert marker for pedophile rings that's also plausibly deniable. It is a subconscious reinforcing mechanism to where once they undergo the spin programming, you know, they will also be coached and, you know, basically, you know, they get broken down into a state of Stockholm syndrome. That's important to understand. And then they see these and they kind of have like a switch and kind of, instead of being repulsed, they'll be pulled to that because there's also elements at the end where they'll get rewards, things like this. And again, that Stockholm syndrome gets them to bond to it. And so these aren't just a covert marker that communicate and signal. It's also, you know, a subconscious reminder where they see this naturally a lot of places and it reinforces this trauma on a deep subconscious level. But also it's a partial trigger because they will have several triggers. It's layered in sequences and it will be identified. It'll be, you know, that will be one layer of it and it's used in conjunction, you know, in a layered activation sequence because we're getting into the MK Ultra split personality stuff. And again, this is without leaving physical marks. It's a no mark brainwashing. Okay. And the thing here is that basically we hear about, and I think it's pretty fairly known that a lot of like trafficking is controlled by, you know, clandestine services as far as like, especially drug trafficking. And there's elements of them inserting themselves in human trafficking to control certain elements. The part that people aren't aware of, the why, because it's like, why would this go on? You know, who would let this go on? How could you? And the point is, they say, so all of these VIPs that were, you know, and obviously not everybody that's on the Epstein list 100% is going to be knowledgeably involved, right? But the point is that all these people aren't necessarily just sick pedophiles. A lot of it is about trauma bonding and handling assets. Now, when MK Ultra blew and really bad in the church hearings, right,
Church committee, yeah.
in 1977, they already had a new program in place to where they layered it off further for plausible deniability. So what they would do is identify pedophiles and not necessarily come in as law enforcement, although they may sometimes and work deals, but specifically they would have proxies that would insert themselves into pedophile rings, into chat rooms, into things, and they would spread a limited knowledge of these sort of methods to get children to compliant and essentially teach other pedophiles how to brainwash children through spinning, okay, and associated hypnotism and just no mark torture. Now, what they would do is essentially find ones, build them up. Obviously, they're watching them and basically working ones that are in certain positions. Maybe they can also blackmail them, but the point is that they would provide the base conditioning for children assets that they later would tap and claim and pull into their network. Whoa. Because there are more advanced programs further along, but like the government's like, hey, we can apply these cutting edge MK Ultra techniques to people that have a dissociative base from childhood. What we can't do is torture children. So they created an environment through proxies to have an epidemic of tortured children, and then they could pool subjects from that. And that's a large part of what's going on and why national security is blocking this in parts. It's not just because that there is VIPs involved and we're like, oh God, everybody's going to get arrested, like y'all don't want to know the truth. It's because there's literally sleeper spies that they're pulling children from the pool of and turning them into sleeper spies in state-sponsored programs. I mean, it's sad but true. That's what the dirty secret is that's really keeping all this hidden. It's not just the VIPs that's involved. It's that it's a method of, espionage. But me saying this isn't violating national security because because one, all the superpowers know this and utilize similar methods. And now it's getting cutting edge where they're moving away from that somewhat. But the other aspect is that I would never justify this sort of thing ever. Absolutely.
I was gonna say, even if it is national security, if you know this, you have to, and me with you, it is not the moral obligation. It is now like, hey, if we're breaking national security in about 10 seconds, FBI is kicking down my door. 99%. If you came on here telling me about some new jet engine, I'd be like, great, shut the fuck up. I don't want to. This is not worth it. But if you're saying, hey, they're raping and torturing, it is now more obligation to Christ above or your God that you don't have to talk about this. But and it makes sense in the same way that it's like, people that provably show that Operation Sycamore Timber in 2011 that we ran weapons and taught ISIS, funded ISIS, but also taught it how to recruit. You go, so all ISIS are CIA agents? Well, no. What you do is you teach them how to build terror networks. You give them the weapons, show them the training, and then you legitimately just let it go organic. And if in a month or in 9 years or whatever, you need to spin up a terror attack, you've got this fertile thing, and it's entirely plausible. They all truly believe they're jihadists. There's none of them have any link to the CIA. You have to marvel at its intricacy and its beauty to the wrong word because it's so evil, but you have to respect its efficacy and its deniability. Yeah, we don't know who the fuck these people. You can catch any one of them, torture them, and go, "Did the CIA fund you?" They truly believe that they're serving a mullah. They don't think they're serving Langley. And
precisely,
it's evil. You have to respect, because if you don't, you let your guard down. You have to respect. It's like,
oh yeah,
damn,
it's an intelligent,
it's
evil
genius
design,
and
they're planting seeds. They're farmers. The farm.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they're doing, and it's.
And here's
Sorry, keep going.
You're right. And here's the thing is, one, it's unjustifiable at that point once you know what's going on. But the second part is that the true oversight in this, they're not American patriots. They're globalist sellouts that are misusing assets. So no matter what, even if you think it would be worth it and you look at and crunch the numbers and say, hey, everybody in the world's doing it for America as a superpower, we need this for the competitive advantage and to be able to eventually send children unwitting as moles into different areas and just have just a breadth of sleeper spies that are unwitting. But the problem is that globalists are running these programs. Absolutely. The limited oversight are members of globalist orders, period. And,
I was going to say, I personally know Delta Force guys and CIA Ground Branch. See, Ground Branch recruits from Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. They are black ops. I know these guys who have and will do. I mean, did security for H.W. Bush when he went over in Desert Storm to visit the troops. Did security told that if any Marine approached them with their weapon to shoot and kill them. Like these guys were true blue American. They'll do anything for the country. I've had them on the show on camera say, no, no, there is no justification. You cannot. You these are guys that like understand like what if you had to nuke a civilian city in China? Like these are the guys that like they're not pussies. You don't have to
Yeah.
convince them. They
They don't
understand.
have a weak stomach.
No, they're not guys that you have to be like, hey, bigger picture. They get it. They are the guys that are like, this is bigger picture. Those same guys have said absolutely the fuck not. There's no anyone that is justifying the use of children in that, they are not. No, they're not. They're not. So even those guys, they're not. Yeah, like you said, they don't have weak stomachs. They're the guys that have said on the show, on camera, no, fuck that. Absolutely fuck that. So you know, you're right. There is no justification, but it's the bigger picture. No, it's not. You're torturing and raping children. There's no
Yeah.
bigger picture. You're an
Yeah.
idiot.
Absolutely. It's utterly disgusting. So, you know, anyways, that's what's going on. You know, I mean, these people are looking specifically because some of these pedophiles, you know, end up operating daycares, things like this, coveted positions for real sick predators that are absolute psychopaths. And then they'll find a way that they're creating this dissociative thing. They make sure that these people are, you know, taught limited parts of this knowledge that they can later expound on with access codes and triggers on a pre-existing brainwashed base. Okay, and so they're being allowed to operate so they can pull them from. And the people that are okaying this and the limited oversight, these aren't field operatives. These aren't tier one operators. No, you know, these are, you know, guys crunching numbers at desks. Hello, you know, I mean, like, it's fucking. These are the people that like just they would never have their hands on it themselves, you know. They justify it in their mind and are just doing the coldest calculations that may make sense on paper. And there's so many layers removed, and they've just went through whatever they've went through in life. Like it is incredibly psychopathic.
I've had on Richard Rose. He's in his 80s now. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning author. I've had him on for like all of his books, and one of them I think it's called On Violence, and it's about like guys like Himmler or Goring, like they couldn't stand the sight of even seeing like a single prisoner, but from the safety of a desk, they would they'd write out whatever, and it's that level of detachment allows you to be so much more fucked because you don't see any of it. So yeah, you're
Yeah.
the guy. Yeah, it's not these like tier one guys because those guys are on top of being badasses, they're fucking like testosterone laden, strong backbone, moral guys. The ones that enable this shit, they're fucking pussies. Well, it's the not only are they okay with it being a bigger picture, they're not going to buck the system. These aren't guys that are going to say this is wrong. These are the guys that will sign off on a shipping container full of kids. They're
And then do anything they can to cover it up, especially when they know they're going to face the
and now they're already
consequences.
involved. Yeah, no, and it's you know what? It's they're you're complicit. You're a fucking spineless demon. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. So getting forward here, I mean,
Yeah,
that's the basis of spin programming. I mean, you know, you see all these spirals, all this, it's cueing, it's signals, it's subconscious reinforcement, and that's what it's based in. It's based in the psychiatric methods that were developed in the 1800s and you know are used for no mark torture, no mark brainwashing, and it's among the most effective. And again, you know, there's some resources with this, but anybody that wants to dig in, I would say in the field of dissociative trauma therapy and the specialists that work with organized abuse, it's called a lot of things, but people get knocked for naming it different stuff. Just like ritual abuse, oh, that's fake, that's fake. Okay, we've went over the criminal statutes for ritual abuse have exemptions for government research projects. Well, you know, but then moving on, they call it, you know, mind control. We've talked about this. That's a little bit, that's also like, oh, really? Mind control?
Yeah.
You know, but organized abuse. It's just literally dark behavioral neuroscience. It's just using the methods that are as undetectable as possible, that are less likely to pass a threshold that will cause biological harm to where they can't use this, where they're damaging, you know, their possible future asset, and they're just using the most effective means necessary, and ones that they can train others to use, especially if they can layer in plausible deniability. So that's what's going on, and that's the dirty truth behind that. I guess now what we're going to do is shift away a little bit lighter, but also just go into a
Yeah.
little bit how this went into military and aerospace.
Did it really?
Yeah, well,
Oh,
yes.
Jesus. I mean,
Yeah,
the first
well,
thing I thought about when you started saying spin, my first thought was like, I just went full, like, retard take. But I was like, man, the whole Earth is spinning. Are we just in some giant brainwashing mission? And I was like, wait, that's planetary motion. Like, don't go full
right,
retard.
right. So, so here's the thing: is that obviously, it's established that spinning can be used. And just as an example, like this, obviously, this is just a random video. So like, nothing against this guy, but like, homemade contraptions, right? Like how hard it is. I mean, good God, that's going to do it. And that's like, kind of advanced compared to just like a spinning thing hooked to a little motor. Anything
Yeah.
that spins like crazy could be used. Anybody can do this. Any pedophile can do this in their basement. It's not, super extravagant. Um, one other thing too, just to add, is that because we're about to get to where this is relevant. This is Andrija Puharich. You may have heard of him. He was one of the foremost mind control doctors. Okay, and he worked with Uri Geller. He
Yeah.
worked with a lot. He created the term indigo children, space kid, star kid, star child. A lot of this new agey stuff, a lot of this channeling came from him and stuff. But he was known to have a place in Ossing, New York. It's called the Turkey Farm, and he had like these so-called space kids that were, thought they were from other planets, this and that. Now, essentially, he pioneered brainwashing some of these, and worked in MK Ultra, and we're about to see the crossover because we get to some of this tech. And what's important to know is, I know it's a little controversial, but again, if people dig in to the wide consensus from the data, from just the massive cooperation from nationwide dissociative trauma specialists and all the patients, there has been reported of brainwashing at NASA facilities and at other areas. Okay, it's specifically in space camps as well. Now, I'm not saying everybody in NASA is bad or any of this. There has been things to where, like in Project Flicker, Operation Flicker or whatever, that, there was a lot of pedophilia that came up too. So, like, whatever it is, there's things in certain areas. But it's important to know the basis of this. And then we go to human centrifuges, okay? So the first centrifuge for human research were used by Erasmus Darwin, the grandfather of Charles Darwin. Again, even the centrifuges are based on the forefront and research that evolved into spin programming. So it's interesting, and you look at the formation of NASA again, and remember some of the first stuff was the German. It was happening
Yeah.
right in the German areas, and then you have a lot of that went into the formation of NASA. That's documented. So you go into these centrifugal. Human centrifuge, and it's noting openly just the basis from Darwin's design. So anyways, so the evolution into human centrifuges, mastiff, and high stakes military and aerospace applications.
Give me 30 seconds. Let me piss. Tell everyone
Yep.
to find your Twitter.
Find me on Gray Area Monarch on X. And we're exposing everything MK Ultra, brainwashing, Monarch, ritual abuse, and related.
Sorry about that. I drink more water than
No, you're good. I was over here.
anybody
I run my mouth so fast. I'm over here chugging water
Hey, you're
myself.
good,
So,
brother. All right, keep going.
yep. So it's good. We're going to back off a little bit now on the pedophilia. We've all had enough, understood what's going on with that. We got to address it and eliminate it. But just going into the centrifuges, it's noted again, coming from Darwin, and that basically, the first large-scale human centrifuge was designed for aeronautical training in Germany, right? So, then we followed suit here in the U.S. So that's kind of what it goes into. And so, these principles, again, it's, not just for brainwashing. When it's effective psychologically, okay? And, we have a lot that goes into this, because this goes into all sorts of things, okay? Like when it gets into G-lock and centrifuges and stuff like this, and Bigelow, you have a lot of people that have done research on this, and consciousness research is heavily overlapped with this. And again, that just all ties in with MK Ultra and, MK Ultra derived things. And this is just, it's ripe for it in the UAP scene. And you know how heavily Bigelow Aerospace is involved with that. We have multi-axis trainers, okay? And hear me out. I'm not saying that everybody that goes through these are brainwashed, but it's important to understand the application, because, you got the Aero Trim multi-axis trainers, or MAT, and then you have the multiple axis space test inertia facility, MASTIF. And, as noted, Darwin's early ideas influenced the development of large-scale human centrifuges, okay? So, in high stakes military and aerospace roles, where failure can lead to catastrophic outcomes, spinning devices offer dual purpose, okay? Physical training and psychological conditioning, okay? The disorienting effects of centrifuges, it mirrors the trauma-based control of spin programming on certain levels, okay? And they have also been widely reported. This is what's going on from cooperation from nationwide trauma therapists. People report being in facilities. So you have the aspect of people in these programs that end up getting these utilized, but also on perhaps a lesser extent, it's used as well for pilots and astronauts that are operating expensive cutting-edge equipment, because they have to perform flawlessly under extreme stress. So, obviously it's no secret that it's used for conditioning, and not everything has to be to the sinister extent. That's not what we're saying, but it's important to understand how some of this technology can be used ethically and can be used, in a manner that actually is, intelligent, right? But then there is obviously a spectrum to where if it gets cranked up and they just spin it like crazy, well, then obviously it can go into brainwashing. And I guess when you're having the, astronauts and top pilots that are just operating the most expensive equipment, you have to have them conditioned right to the mark. A lot of the research and development also isn't done on them, because they've already put so much resources into training the pilots and astronauts. The research and development, unfortunately, is done with some of these people, is done with some of these people in these programs. If they have invested resources in some of these assets from childhood, and then essentially they're just not in a place to be useful in other manners, if they're not going to be a good sleeper asset, they can't place them anywhere, then they lean on the research and development and testing thresholds, testing long-term studies. And this is just something that's been going on. And, that just is what it is, So basically, that's getting through it. We got one more little part here. Just same thing with the Mastiff with the astronauts. The mats are more for Air Force and stuff like that. And then you get into like astronaut stuff. You get into some of these, like the Mastiff was like early developed for like Mercury or whatever, stuff like this, which is Gemini. Just kind of that same sort of thing. So, anyways, now, the last look at this is, there is a speech by James Giordano, okay? People may be familiar with him. This guy's like a neuroscience expert, and he gives a lot of talks on neuro warfare and cutting-edge technology. That audio is not coming through, right?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure so it's not.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the effects of the spin program, disorientation, disassociation, and compliance, they found a modern parallel in neurowarfare. Okay. And in this talk and many others, Dr. James Giordano, who's a neuroscientist and DARPA advisor, and this is his 2018 lecture, Softworks J5 Donovan Group Radical Speaker Series. So he goes into how the intersection of neuroscience and warfare, how basically there's a focus on some of these technologies that can target the brain to achieve effects that are akin to spin programming. And what I mean by that is that, they can manipulate the brain function without physical contact. Some of these remote directed energy weapons, and we hear about some of our top people at consulates. We hear about some of our high level agents, and I mean this has come out now. Considerably to where they're saying, yes, our own guys are getting hit with this, right? It's not just that they're getting targeted to fry their brain from like enemies. There is elements to where nations are also targeting each other with essentially remote mind control technology. This is the big thing that's going on behind the scenes. And through the directed energy, basically it has the same effect. Instead of a spinning chair, the microwave weapons that are making the Havana syndrome and developing this, because obviously there's a wide range. Sometimes they are just looking to fry someone's brain, right? But one of the things is that they cause vestibular disruption and cognitive impairment, and essentially same thing: loss of cognition, loss of balance, throw the equilibrium out, and just basically they'll vibrate, the part in the inner ear and all this to where they attack through the vestibular, and that allows them to easily manipulate their subjects in many ways. It's essentially just from zapping them with frequency in the specific portion of the brain that are known to vibrate at certain frequencies. It causes the same effect as spin programming, and that's just a large crossover there. And he goes in depth to it. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse, and this isn't my field to describe that in any articulable way. But that's really just what it is at the end of the day. So it's just, that's about it. Basically, spin programming, was started way back in the 1800s, developed into just massive, like the underlying mechanism for modern day brainwashing. And it's one of the foremost tools that actually a lot of these, programmed sex slave children go through. And a lot of them, that's why they're not necessarily tortured. Like they're passing these kids around and they seem happy because they're brainwashed, literally have a split personality, and have underwent this spin programming. And then certain ones, they end up guiding and routing to become assets, and they go into espionage and things like this. This is like the major workhorse war force that we have, and all the countries are doing it, all the major countries, and it's absolutely disgusting, needs to be stopped. And like this is the root of why they're allowing this. Okay, like yes, there's a lot of evil stuff with it and all that, but on paper, when it gets to the national security apparatus, what's going on is it's justified because it is embedded with literal behavioral modification programs. So that's what it is. And just now they're finding ways to, replicate that with technology. So it's a little bit cleaner, but still the people that did this are still some of the same corrupt globalists behind the scenes that are running these programs in safe spaces where, they don't get voted in or out, and people need to hold them responsible. They're trying to clean their hands, but the same psychopaths that decided to do this and also misuse assets for their corrupt purposes cannot be left at the wheel. They have to be removed. And that's about it.
In terms of like the training for pilots and stuff, again, that's like the sticky gray area of like, yeah, it's not all bad. It's
There's a spectrum.
I was just watching a thing. I was just watching these short clips last night, and this guy in Delta Force talking about, that final like 0.01% that makes them better. And when the 0.01% comes to putting a bullet in someone's head, like, yeah, it does matter because it's they're dead or you're dead. Or of course it matters. Other shit doesn't quite matter. But something like that, and it's like there's only so much you can consciously think about before you have to get to reflexive. And it's, you can train, pull up, reload, re-engage, over and over and over again. So you do have to get to a point where it is reflexive, to where I don't have any fighting training, nothing, but I have like basic human reflexes, right? If you came up to me right now and somebody be like, nobody's in my apartment. If somebody came up and I didn't see him on camera and tapped me, I would jump. That's like your kind of your baseline software. Jump,
Mhm.
right? It's something. It's better than nothing. Versus if I was in a coma for 34 years and you woke me up today and someone came up to me and put their hand. I wouldn't know I'm supposed to be surprised. I wouldn't know anything, right? It's so, but there is that. So when, something pops up and they turn and do a double tap, there could be some conscious thought of like, hey, we got someone over there. But there's a lot of it where, and this is what these guys are saying, is like, it is just, if I sneeze right now, you go, bless you. No, we didn't plan that. It's just, bless you. Hey, thank you, whatever. There is that sort of noise left shoot, right? Especially if you're in an area where it's like there should be no one else around. You're not doing like a security detail in the middle of a city. If you're out in some black operation in fucking Kandahar, Afghanistan, and it's 3 a.m. and you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you hear a noise, turn shoot. I can absolutely see where that would be a thing. One, financially, you got these guys in some $600 million prototype fighter, or also like aside from all the, fucking pedophile faggots, there is like, that's the other thing is like, there is real national security. Like the world history is an ugly place. If you have these guys in F-22 Raptors flying around defending a city after a dirty bomb, and then something happens during a dogfight, you probably want them to, you would probably want them to afterwards, after a successful dogfight, be like, man, I don't even know how that happened. It was just reflexive. You probably do want that. Let's go one step further. I would probably work for surgeons, like trauma surgeons, not one where it's like a planned out. Yeah, we're doing a skin graft. They come in, mangled from a car crash, two bullet holes. You probably want them in there going on just instinct. It's a trauma surgeon, or they're in residency. They haven't slept in 40 hours. You probably don't want them being like, oh, what do I do if I see that the carotid artery is semi? You probably want them just like the cat when it sees a bug and its eyes go black and it just goes. You probably do want that, and that's not even necessarily a bad thing.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
also being used for bad things. It's which is just the eternal, what do you use the knife for? Stab your grandma or put butter on bread for your grandma, right? And that's that it's a tool, but I was just thinking like, no, that would be an important thing for something like you're in a $2 billion stealth bomber. You probably want those guys. You probably want to use everything, everything to make sure they don't fuck up. Like, why wouldn't you? The other side is the worst among us use them for, I feel like nefarious isn't even the right word. Outright black-hearted, soulless spawn of Satan uses. But as with all of this, it's the first step is acknowledging that it's real and trying to at least educate yourself on it. And that's why I always come back to with like episodes like this. It's like, are you and Gray gonna take down that? Yeah, probably not. Just realistically, probably not. But you can slowly shift the Overton window to the point where, slow Overton window shifts 20 years ago. Most conspiracies that we now accept as true, well, this wackadoodle, he believes the Gulf of Tonkin, versus now, there are still like the batshit conspiracies, but you also have a lot of people that are like, yeah, I mean, was COVID Chinese? Like, that's a big thing that people are, in my parents' generation, the baby boomers, that they're openly like, yeah, it was kind of weird that the whole Lee Harvey Oswald thing. But we don't think about it, but 20 years ago, that was absurd. There's only crazy people like probably myself and a younger Gray that were like, yeah, it's all fucked. Like, so it's not nothing to slowly shift the Overton window. Right now we all accept a lot of this shit's real. I think with the Epstein client list and it not coming out, more and more people are accepting that, and a lot of people don't want to touch it. Give it another 10 years. Like if you and I could real quick just go to Twitter 10 years from today, I think we would probably, in a weird way, we would probably be inspired. Could be like most people would be like, yeah, everyone knows this shit's true. Everyone knows like satanic ritual abuse is a way in which they try to keep their power. Versus right now, that's still one of the like the conspiracies are like I think Alan Watts said it's like a taboos are like an onion. As soon as you come to peace with one, there's a deeper one. There's one a little more in the peripheral that you, oh, I'm not looking at that. And then you address that and you come to terms with it. And then there's another one. So it's not all for naught, you know, and it might take 10 years, 20 years, it might be our grandkids. But eventually, I mean, can you imagine our grandparents in like the 50s? Everyone's coming back. Everyone and their brother has like a silver star from the war. Do you think any of them would have been publicly accepted if they said, do you think FDR knew about Pearl Harbor beforehand? You would have been beaten in the street. Versus now, that's like vanilla. Like, yeah, I think we kind of wanted a war. So that's what I mean is you might say like, man, that's such a slow glacial pace of progress. Well, the alternative is we can't really do anything. So it does help to do these things. And I think that feeling of like blackpilling or helplessness, that is part of this mind control shit. They want you to think that there's nothing you can do. But there is something you can do, and it's slowly shift these wind. And so earlier when you text me, you're like, I don't want to go full nerdy. And I'm like, go full nerdy because that's what some people, the people that already believe this shit, like you and I, they don't need to be convinced more. There
Mhm.
are people that are like, hey, you got to break it down for me in terms of neuroscience. And if you pull up this shit and here's a guy softworks and he's given a thing, it's like a defense contract, people start to go, oh, holy shit. There's a little more meat on the bones to it. So I do think it's important. Not that you implied it wasn't, but just I think some people are like, well, what's the point of even talking about it? It's so big, it's so grand. It's you also fucking have to. What are you gonna if you we can move the needle 0.0001% in terms of just the Overton window. Yeah, that's nothing. Okay, yeah, it's not a lot. But when it's something so heinous, what are we moving the needle on? That Wall Street's corrupt? Yeah, what are you born yesterday? If we're talking about the satanic ritual abuse, torture, kidnapping, rape, and killing of children, dude, you have to. You can only move the needle 0.0001%. Move that needle. You have to. It's so egregious.
On principle.
You
You know,
have to. I get it. If it's something else, like I want you to risk your life to move the needle on, on Harry Truman was a corrupt. I'd be like, yeah, I don't really, whatever. The torture and rape and satanic ritual abuse and brainwashing of I mean, dude, it is. I was thinking about this the other night. We can come to a close with this, but I was every once in a while you'd have the teacher, sometimes in college, and they'd give you the bullshit extra credit for the kid, not for the kids that were trying to get into law school or medical school, but for the senior that had like a 68 instead of a 70, and they were gonna have to do another semester. They'd give you like the show up and give me write two paragraphs on the importance of being a community lead. They're giving you the layup. They're like, just don't fail the fucking class. And if you didn't take the extra credit, you really were a dog shit and you deserve to fail. But a lot of teachers, even in like organic chemistry and cellular biology, they'd give you the layup. They'd go past the class, get the fuck out of my face. They were giving you just a passing grade. I had one professor in college. I had just gotten into medical school, 4.0 student with all but I had to finish taking language credits. I'm not fucking using this shit, dude. I'm cocky. I'm going to med school. And I had to take German and I was failing German. And this dude knew I was like, I'm not fucking doing this. Come on, man. So he was like, if you turn in like he gave me like an extra credit question on the final. And I failed the final, but he gave me 140 on it. Not like 101. He gave me 140. And it was sort of a get the fuck out of my face kind of thing. My point is like, so what's the point? What am I getting at? I feel like this is God saying like, all right, you didn't volunteer at a hospital, you didn't feed the homeless man. Children getting raped and killed. Do any share one link on Twitter. I'm trying to get you to pass the class. Anyone with any brain cell can go, yeah, I should. This is probably something I should do. I feel like that's kind of what God's doing. All the other stuff, it's intricate, different levels of karma and the right thing and moral and ethical versus ignorance versus willful ignorance. This is something where the professor's like, if you show up and draw a smiley face, I will give you 100 extra points on your final exam, you piece of shit. And if you don't show up for that, you deserve what's coming. I kind of feel like that's what it's so it's the abuse of children. No, it's the satanic ritual abuse, torture, murder, brainwashing, rape, and killing of children. Yeah, I'll show up for the class. I'll draw a smiley face. Like, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I view this stuff. I'm like, yeah, Ed, yeah, you have to. It only moves the Overton window. You have to. And if you don't, you know, you're a bad person. So I don't really know where I was going with that whole rambling rant.
Well, we appreciate you and you passed the class for sure. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, how much does it affect people and all that? I mean, here's the thing is, I've went back and forth with this, with myself and with other people. Things can spread like wildfire now, and a lot of people either are gonna listen and gonna already know about it and it's not that much news or not. But I guess just the basic takeaways is, understanding a little bit can help and can help bridge the gap for people talking amongst themselves. It's a little bit, oh yeah, the spinning stuff, the spiral, it actually stands for no mark brainwashing and there's science behind it. That will make the difference for some people. And I appreciate you helping to get out there because, I'm not arguing against pilots being conditioned, with ethical
Yes.
methods to be cutting edge. But when they're hiding under the same apparatus, that needs to be exposed because a lot of the people within the system that would never stand for this, they're being compartmentalized from it and it's happening
Sure.
right under their nose.
Sure.
But when some of these people even hear about it, and it's a hard gap to bridge, but when some of these people get about it, accountability can come swift, and
Yeah.
it might not seem like it's there, but the second the right ripple goes and these people make these connections, they say, oh, there's something weird, what's up with this? And, they put two and two together that this apparatus is being used for other means or something. And, because there is some funny movement of people going around and just people knowing, keeping eyes on in certain areas makes it a lot harder for these people to do. So we're going to crucify them either way. This stuff's coming to light and I greatly appreciate you airing it and helping get the word out on this stuff.
Of course, brother. And I was gonna say, yeah, no, it's like I don't know if you ever go to like a Chick-fil-A or fucking a McDonald's or something. You go there and like the manager's just being a real piece of shit. They're lying about your order. And every once in a while, somebody be like, "Yeah, I contacted like McDonald's corporate," and they're like, "They're not going to do anything." Like you don't have to like McDonald's, dude. But the people that like rise to the top are people who are like, "We do not stand for this." The manager's been let go. You go, "Oh, there are people. They're few and far between, but there are people who are like, absolutely the fuck not. This is not going on." And like, you never know who that person is. Like, there might be someone that's like, "We're looking at this immediately." You never know. And again, it's like you do have to try. You absolutely have to try because it's if you don't, then it will never happen. It's like you have to buy the lottery ticket for there to be a chance. It's a small chance, but you have to, at the bare minimum, you do have to go buy the ticket. You can't go, I hope I win the mega billions. It's like you didn't even buy a ticket. It literally cannot happen. You have to at least enter the pool. So that's how I view this. Is like, and then ultimately, like in super big picture, I think, God, the creator, whatever you want, one day will judge you and be like, yeah, no, none of it did work, but that wasn't the point. The point was you came to a fork in the road. You had to do your part. And
On
you do have
principle.
to, and you do have to do, well, the Red Cross money was, some of it was, embezzled. That's not the point. It was, you came to it. It's the guy ringing the bell, Salvation Army on Christmas Eve. Is the guy probably going to take some of the money? Probably. It's for you to go, but did you put $10 in on Christmas Eve? It's on you. Past that, it's not under your control. But what did you do? So yeah, man, we'll keep doing these episodes. Roller coaster. We started with gender identity and ended on the brainwashing of black tech fighter jet pilots, but
And
scream
y'all
them.
out there, y'all hear them. Do your part.
Do your part.
Do your
Do one
part.
little thing, and
You know.
so when you're fucked afterlife, you weren't a great person, you weren't a bad person. God goes, you did retweet the thing. You're fucking lucky. I can't believe he gives you the passing grade. Yeah, you got to see. C's get degrees, man. That's hey, take the layup. Um, but yeah, guys, please go follow him on Twitter. All your websites are in the description, and yeah, we'll schedule another one, and it'll be as unhinged and unfocused as this one. I hope. All right, great, dude. Always
All right,
good
man.
to have you on, man. My platform is yours. Keep doing the Lord's work. It's the right thing to do. Appreciate you,
Thank you,
brother.
sir.
Yes, man.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.